Okay, well, I guess we'll just go ahead and go live now, assuming that everything's working. So originally I had set the stream to go on at 6:30 p.m., but apparently YouTube didn't like that and set it for whatever the heck. So I just came back in and saw a bunch of comments sitting in the live stream showing that people were waiting for me earlier than I intended to be on. So I apologize for that. I need to figure out why YouTube decided that that's what they wanted to do. So, with that said, how's it going, everyone, now that everything's unbroken, I hope? So at least we know now. I retract my thumbs down. Well, thank you for that, Redacted. Your name is very apt at that point. There's a few things that I wanted to get taken care of. One is I decided I'd go ahead and grab my podcast format and use that for the live stream this time so you can have the live chat. Oh, over there. I'm used to just pointing up. So if you see the two blank slots over there, that's why. Normally that's where me and Ocean are on the podcast. But super chats and subscribers and everything should still go into that area down there. So at least there's that. That way there's some more in the chat that you guys can mess with if you want. Typical blame YouTube. I mean, hey, if you want to hit reload and come back, then I won't stop you. So there's a few things that I wanted to definitely get out of the way today. So obviously last week I started doing daily uploads, and I actually have enjoyed it. It's been a lot more stressful for obvious reasons. Most of my videos that are not live format take a decent bit of time to actually make, because I do try to have them, edited with the character blinking and things popping in and sound effects and all that other fun stuff that takes time, even though it's not necessarily difficult. So there are a few things that I have a request for from my audience. One is that obviously if there's things that you want me to do on my channel, let me know. I have my email address in the box below, so you can always check on that to see, whenever you want to have a particular thing covered. I'll take a look at it, see if I can make a video out of it. If I can, then I would be more than happy to. As I've pointed out before, the biggest things that I want to take on are extremism or things that are overtly harmful. Although I would not mind dealing with more nutcasey stuff every now and again as well. Discount Hoven is an example. That series is pure entertainment. I don't expect anybody to get anything substantial out of that series. I merely expect them to maybe come in and laugh. And so it's a nice break sometimes, even if the course of making every Discount Hoven video is an exercise in whether or not my wall can survive the brute frontal force of my head. With that said, nudity of the female persuasion. Actually, Bionic Dance requested that as well. She said specifically more naked chicks. We do have a super chat from earlier from Nick. See my earlier comment about medical pseudoscience. My best resource is sciencebasedmedicine.org. Nick, you said that you're not sure of my expertise. I have none. I'm a layman. I study things on the fly. I'd like to see all forms of medical pseudoscience and quackery bullshit brutally dismembered. Last week, my mom died from cancer. She initially refused medical treatment because she was deep down the rabbit hole of alternative medicine. One, I'm sorry to hear that. I wish I could actually explain how that made me feel, but I don't really have words. That bothers me deeply. But I will definitely make it a point to try to cover more pseudoscience stuff. Actually, that's one of the reasons I have the Dangers of Woo series, is so I can get into the more pseudoscience-y things, deal with those as I can, and try to take on that pretty much when it comes up. Because that kind of goes in with the extremism. Medical pseudoscience kills people, just like religious extremism can kill people, so I would definitely like to cover it on my channel, do everything in my power to take on. Neil604Atheist says, "What's up, Cirrus? Do more Yu-Gi-Oh!" Actually, me and WK Dad are slated to do some GOAT format this weekend. We're probably going to be doing that over on my gaming channel if you want to check that out, Neil. So that's a thing we'll be doing. The fundies say that I don't stand for truth. Fundamentalists will say anything. They'll say practically anything they can to get their particular agenda across, which is different than what you see in some of the... Not all the skeptic community. Some of the people in our community are a little less honest than others. I don't want to name any names. Though there is one that most of you probably know. He's a treat. I've debated, not debated, but gone again. Well, I'll just say it's Deconverted Man. I'm not a fan of Deconverted Man. I've talked to him on Steve McRae's channel and a few other times, and we seem to get along, but past that, not the biggest fan. But I don't want to get into any details on that because I try to stay as very far away from drama as I can on my channel, specifically because my channel is not about drama, just about debunking quackery and doing all that fun stuff. Neil says he's picking up cards. Excellent. Anyways, so there's a few things that I wanted to get out of the way. One is obviously I've been doing live streams for my Monday videos, and I kind of want to keep doing live streams for my Monday video because otherwise it means that Sunday, where I could be doing... we have a D&D on Sundays, actually, and it's one of the few days I'm giving myself off. I'd have to produce Monday's video Sunday, just because I typically make the video a day in advance and then upload it. Doing the live stream Monday means that I get two things out of it. One, I can continue making sure that I have a video out on Monday and without having to work on the Sunday previous to build the video. Two, and more importantly, this gives me an avenue to talk with you guys directly, because on the podcast, I only really have enough time to respond to Super Chats because we have a guest on and we've got 3 people talking. Here, it's just me. I can talk to you guys. Let's see, we've got Lisa for Truth, Casey Atheist, Chris, Neil, and a bunch of others in the chat as well. So I can actually say hi to you guys specifically, interact with you guys, because without you guys, without this audience, my channel doesn't exist. It doesn't have any functional purpose without people that are watching, listening, and helping me improve. So without you guys, I don't exist. So I want to make sure that Monday is always an avenue that I can use to talk with you guys, specifically, if possibly. Neil says we've put a deck together for Mr. Atheist 2. He's getting back into the game. Yeah, I've talked with Jimmy about that. He's not very happy with the state of the game, but he is getting back in. And Clade Starver says daily means weekdays. Yes, weekdays, definitely. 5 videos a week. And it can't be more than that for a few reasons. One, I do have to give myself a little bit of time to breathe because I do have some very edit-heavy videos, and I don't want to burn myself out. 2, I'm trying to treat this like my day job because the actual thing that I do on the side to earn extra money is PA work for film. I'm trying to get jobs doing PA work for the film industry, and those are 10 to 12-hour days. And the days that I do that, I am completely wiped out. So if I had to do 7 videos a week, then the 2 days that I would otherwise be able to take to either rest or produce videos so that I can have videos throughout the week when I go to do those 10 and 12-hour days, I would no longer have that. And I'd not only burn myself out, but I'd probably just go completely crazy with no ability to breathe or do anything because I'd be working and doing absolutely nothing but working. So I don't want to do that. That's not good for you guys. That's not good for me. That's not healthy. So you guys are getting 5 videos, not 7. But, so again, what do you guys want to see out of the Monday videos? Like I said, I specifically want this to be the avenue where I talk with you guys and, you know, keep you guys up to date with what's going on here. Think of it sort of like I'm thinking of it sort of like a blog type of deal, but I really don't know if that's how I want to go about it. I want to let you guys decide, both in the live chat and in comment section. I'm not in the Hollywood industry, but I am trying to push myself into film a little bit. Did we decide on a date for you to come on my show, Cyrus? Neil, I believe I was on your show already. Wasn't it about a week and a half ago I was on your show with the deconversion story? That was the thing I've already done. Reese says more Pam and kittens. I would love to have more Pam and kittens. Unfortunately, Pam is at work right now. And I try, if possible, to do some of my live streams, except when it's times that she's not working. Some of my live streams, I try to keep it where it's just me. That way, she's not having to stay quiet because we game in the same room. It's actually our living room that we do everything in. So, like, here's my gaming station right here with Photoshop, second monitor where you guys are. There's my PC, but there's her PC and her gaming station literally right there as well. So whenever I'm live on camera, generally speaking, that's time, at least for the podcast, where she's not able to talk a lot. So I try to do that when she's not here if possible. That way she's not having to sit here quiet in her own house. That's not terribly fair to her. Although the last time we had the podcast, we did actually really enjoy having the thing where every time somebody sent a super chat out, I got beat with the hammer. For every dollar in super chat, I got to take a hammer beating, which is useful because it was a chat between me, Ocean, and Steve McRae, and all of us are really into philosophy, which means that the conversations can get very bogged down in very aggravating definitions. Also, I learned just now that I need to turn off Facebook because people are messaging me on Facebook, and it can definitely be heard through here. So that's fun. When does she sit quiet? She seems to feel like bugging you whilst online. Well, yes, she does, but she bugs me whenever I'm live because she doesn't like sitting down and being quiet when I'm live. So that's kind of one of the compromises that we've done is like for podcasts, anytime that she is available, we're going to do the super chat thing where anytime super chats come in, I get beat with a hammer. Otherwise, we won't do things. And also, she doesn't want to talk so much on the podcast itself because in the podcast, I am going to end up taking all the podcasts and retrofitting them into a podcast proper for putting on like iTunes and stuff like that. And when you don't have the visual aid, so you don't see like Pam coming into the screen, you don't have context for some of the things that are being said anymore. Just having the conversation between the guests is important there. This particular show, though, not necessarily the case. This is something that I would like her to participate in the days that we're able to, because I don't want her to just sit there and be quiet. And yes, Ocean is definitely a philosophizer. It's one of his hobbies. It's one of my hobbies. And yeah, the visual stuff doesn't work very well with audio only. At least to some extent, you guys can hear the hammer hits whenever those come in. So hopefully that context won't be lost when the podcast is audio only. But that's the hope. That might not necessarily be the case. Lay Super True says, "Have you recovered from your concussion?" Yes, I have. It didn't hurt as much that time as the time that I did the video on urine therapy. When I saw the piss drinking thing on Non Sequitur Show, and I did a video about that. I actually had to take medication that day for the pain because I filmed the beginning of the video me hitting my head with the hammer, and the microphone was decently far away, so I wanted to make sure that the sound was audible. It was at that time that I hadn't really thought about just putting the sound effects in post, so I hit myself hard enough to cause myself like physical pain lasting throughout the entire day. Never doing that again. I'm going to stick with what I did with Godless Iowans video where we fought and just make sure that I add in the sound effects in post. I'll bet Pam loved your beating. She probably did. She probably did, honestly. Raymond Hagerman says, "Hey, sir, it's great to see you doing well." Hey, thanks. What's your character class and race on your D&D game? Mine is currently a half-elf paladin named Rusa. My alignment in there is Chaotic Good, and I've sworn Oath of Vengeance. That's my paladin for the time being in our D&D campaign. Actually, the last thing that happened in our campaign was we found a banshee, and Pam, as a cleric, apparently decided that she wanted to try to wed the banshee. She serves a chaotic evil god, so that's not outside of her alignment, at least. And yeah, that was most of the campaign was us just basically dragging her away from the banshee, going, "Look, she'll kill you. Stop." So that was fun and interesting. I also need to get WD-40 for this chair. I can hear it anytime that I listen to my audio in post. I can hear this. It's a horrible, horrible sound. It is not a fun thing. See, Fenrir the God Eater is here. Fenrir, I haven't seen you in a very long time. Don't hit yourself in the head with a hammer. Just a thought. I'd like to, but unfortunately, my industry is all entertainment, and if I'm not able to be at least mildly entertaining, then I can't do a whole lot. And slapstick is one of the purest forms of comedy. So if I can hit myself in the head with a hammer and make you guys laugh, it's worth taking a few painkillers. So I don't care. Doesn't really bother me that much. I see Compelled Unbelievers here. I'm very happy to see him here. I like his channel. What edition of D&D are we playing? We're playing 5th edition right now. I've only ever played 5th edition, and then there was an earlier version that I played years and years and years ago, but I can't remember what it was because I was very young at the time. So I had no idea. Like, I just knew what D&D was, and I kind of went through the motions with the DM, but I don't remember what edition it was. So I've played another edition. I just can't for the life of me remember what it was anymore. Oh god, I needed that laugh. D&D is hilarious. It's the craziest things happen in D&D. It's wonderful. You can get a rogue to, take a ring that disenchants all things and get a whole bunch of cannonballs enchanted to be tiny, put them in his flintlock pistol and then fire out cannonballs that start as little flintlock rounds and fire through the ring and become cannonballs at the end and just destroy the entire campaign. You can do silly things like that. Fender says that he died. Why did you die? It's not a good thing. Don't do that. I'd prefer if you didn't die. Dying is not something that I like. As an atheist, I don't really have a great view on the afterlife. So if you die, that's the end as far as I'm concerned. And I don't want it to be the end. That means that I would lose a friend, which would be bad. But some of the things that are happening this week on the channel, I wanted to give you guys a bit of a preview for what to look forward to this week. Obviously, this is going to be the first podcast this Thursday that will not have Ocean, because Ocean's not coming back until December. So hopefully you guys enjoy the co-host that I will pick for that. I don't want to spoil anything yet, either in co-host or guest. You guys are just going to have to wait and see the day of and see what happens with that. To answer the question, what do you want to see? Boobs. I want to see boobs. You know what, Chrismer? I actually have one clickbait thumbnail. Not on this channel, but on my gaming channel. And the one clickbait thumbnail video is the only one that actually garnered a significant amount of views compared to everything else on the channel. So maybe I should just go with putting boobs on things. Honestly, I should just have a picture of Ken Ham, do a video response about Ken Ham, but it's just Ken Ham and just Photoshop a rack on him, just because. Why not? You need to be specific. Sirs might do a stream without a shirt on. I am friends with the Godless Iowan. I'm apt to do things like that if need be. Someone revive the Good Eater. How goes the Peanut Butter Wars? So far, apparently, when me and Godless Iowan did the debate on the Geek Room, it came out in the Twitter poll afterwards that I won the debate. But a few days after that, Kyle went on to the Non Sequitur show and said that he pulled some super glue out of his hair using Peter Pan peanut butter. So apparently the war is still on. I know that there's another channel that's doing something involving the peanut butter war, and it's not me, and it's not Godless Iowan, but it is somebody that most of you know. But I don't want to spoil. I want them to be the ones that show when they get in on that. But ideally, you guys will enjoy what's become pretty much a purely entertaining side project. No substance, just laughs. Are you saying that I'd be adverse to the decision? No, that's for a different conversation. I'd keep the raunchy stuff on GI's channel. It doesn't fit with yours. Yeah, that's true. The tone of my channel has kind of moved in the direction of being almost purely educational and somewhat entertaining. For instance, on Godless Iowan's channel, when we started the whole peanut butter war thing on his channel, he received nothing but positive remarks for it. But on my channel, I actually got a few people who said, hey, never do a video like this ever again. We don't like this. I've got a few negative comments on my comment section about it. So I guess it does just not fit with the content that I normally do. But as far as the Peanut Butter Wars go, those videos don't take any effort to make. They don't detract from the videos that you guys normally get. So I'm still going to do those. Doesn't matter so much. Christopher says, boobs tend to garner a lot of attention. Put a rack on something and put it in a thumbnail. You get tons of clicks. I might do it once as a joke, but I don't want to resort to purely clickbaity stuff. The amount of clickbait that I use in my thumbnails already gets me slightly uncomfortable. But most other people don't consider my thumbnails or titles clickbaity. But I still consider them clickbaity enough for me to be uncomfortable. So even with that, it would be problematic. But aside from the podcast this week that I can't give a whole lot of information on, there are a few things that I can give info on. So one of the videos that I'm going to be tackling this week, is probably going to be the video that comes out tomorrow, is a video called Was Jesus Polyamorous? Now, I don't know if any of you realize the problems with that statement. The video is basically a Christian saying that Jesus was polyamorous. I don't know how many of you have read your Bibles, but in biblical canon, Jesus doesn't have any relationships, so at least not of that nature. So canonically, no, he's not. I'm not going to get into too many details on what we're going to be going on in that video, but it's the apologetics that the person goes through in order to extrapolate Jesus being polyamorous are immense. Like, Ken Ham would be jealous of the mental gymnastics this person is able to manage. There are enough boobs on the internet that more isn't even clickbait. It's fair. But yeah, this guy basically, I'm not going to say he's nuts and off the rocker, but his apologetics are lacking in a few areas, where, again, people like Ken Ham and Kant Hovind might be jealous of some of the mental gymnastics this person goes through. But that is only one of the videos we're doing this week. Another one we're going to be doing, if anybody pays attention to Twitter, there's a user named Joshua J. Brister. His Twitter handle is Master Apologist. He's been challenging people to 2-on-2 debates, specifically to go onto the Modern Day Hysteria channel and do a 2-on-2 debate with him and Andrew, who's a member of the Red Pill Religion crowd. I have my own views on RPR. Not everybody in the RPR crowd is awful, but I do think that the net is a bit of a negative. Joshua, though, is a bit of an interesting character. So when he's been going around doing these debates, or trying to do these debates, and he's made a few claims. One of the things he's claimed is that he's currently 400-0, 400 wins, 0 losses. Based on the fact that he's joined Twitter almost a decade ago, I would assume that meant that he did a debate a week. He would have had to have consistently done one debate a week to even come, close to that number. It's not that it's impossible, but he would have had to do quite a lot. And I'm not even sure that he's been on Twitter just strictly trying to get people to debate him. So again, you might even have some. I'm saying he fudged those numbers. I can't find a way that he wouldn't have fudged those numbers. So yes, and Clade pointed out that he won't debate girls. Yes, Shannon Q said that she would gladly debate him and Andrew 1-on-2. She's confident enough to go 1-on-2 with both of them. And Andrew said, "Get back to me somewhere around Christmas." Right after saying, "I don't debate girls." So he's also misogynistic. Just lovely. Good Christian values right there. Great values. So he's going to be very interesting there. Also, Non Sequitur Show just hopped in. How's it going? Just basically doing a update on what's been going on with the channel. Doing a bit of a preview for what we've got this week. You just came in right as we were talking about Joshua, who's been trying to debate people constantly. He's basically kind of said no to Shannon. I mean, he doesn't debate girls, apparently, so yeah, Shannon is obviously not one he's going to debate. Ocean has opted to debate him. He even opted to up the venue, going on to one of the larger channels to have the debate, and Joshua responded by blocking him. So we're going to be going through the chronology of Joshua's debate career. If we look through I'm basically going to be looking through his Twitter as well, finding some gems. We've got some gems in here like, should atheists have the right to vote? Yeah, that's a thing that he's concerned with, is whether or not atheists should have the right to vote. I'm an atheist and I voted, but I guess that doesn't mean a whole lot. We can actually show his Twitter right now through the magic of the internet. So you may just 3, 2, 1. There we go. Boom. I should have been able to just click that, or should have been able to just snap my fingers and that happened, but it didn't. So anyway, if we look through here, we've got should atheists have the right to vote is 1. A response for both theists and atheists from Christian apologists, so S.J. Thomason. Again, I don't have any personal right with S.J., but I don't think she's a great apologist. But he does seem to be buddy-buddy with S.J. Go through here. What else do we have? The Godless Modern Era. That's nothing really major. Try to see if I can find anything else fun that we had on him. I am so happy I'm about to hit the books hard. Oh yeah, that's another thing that this guy does. He has this thing where he will say that he doesn't debate girls, but he'll also say that all atheists just play video games, whereas good Christians get up and start studying. And you know what? I love studying. I love knowledge. Every single time I make a video on a topic that I don't quite understand, I have to do a lot of study to figure out what it is, and you'll see in some of the more research-heavy videos, there's like friggin' 8 cited sources in some of them, and sometimes more. It just depends on how much I need to grab. So I'm no stranger to studying. I enjoy doing it when I have to, but I also don't want to spend my entire time doing nothing but studying. I'd like to be entertained as well. Like, we have these things. We have video games. But what I don't think he understands is that you can get the same out of a video game as you can get out of a good work of fiction. God, there's a Bible joke in there somewhere, I'm sure. Lisa says you must listen to Matt Powell. Actually, I think this guy considers Matt Powell one of the bottom of the barrel theists. I think he doesn't even consider him an actual Christian. So that's just his own personal opinion that he's pulled out of that. Non Sequitur Show says Master Apologist is all the cringe areas of Reddit shaken into Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. Yeah, he actually looks a bit like a grown-up Dexter, but I'm not going to judge my opinions on him based on his looks, because I would be in a horrible situation if I did that, because this face hides behind a cartoon for a reason. Said there's somewhere being upwards of 2,500 deities. What would we discuss? We would discuss Ashra over any of them. My problem with discussing particular deities is that I find them all equally fictitious. So to me, it comes down to which ones are actually causing the most negative impact on the world. As a result, I deal mainly exclusively with Yahweh, Allah, and then I might get into some of the more egregious forms of polytheism at some point. But I'm waiting on that because I want to have Ocean help me with that as well, because me and him share the opinions on some of the more aggressive and toxic sects of polytheists. So I'm going to have him help me out with that because it's his avenue. He's done the research. I haven't. But I'm not going to talk anymore on that right now. That's going to be something that I do with him after he's had some time dealing with those projects himself. Let's get that set up. Plenty of Christians play games too. It's true. In fact, actually, with like, what is it, 82% of Americans are Christian in some form or another. Believe it was either 82 or 73. Wow, those cats are having fun. That's a weird sound. Anyway, so, given that you've got like 70% of Christians in the United States, at the very least, it would, and video game sales in the United States are pretty good. I seriously doubt that atheists, which make up, 8%, maybe? It's a small percentage. I seriously doubt that we are responsible for every single purchase of a video game in the United States. I doubt that. I sincerely doubt that. Yahweh is actually a Canaanite god. There is some evidence that the different forms of the Father God have been taken from other religions, specifically Yahweh from Canaanite. Allah obviously is Yahweh, but with more of the moon god flair. So there is definitely some stuff there, but I haven't done enough research on that to really make any videos on that. But wow, I'm saying a whole lot of ums. My cat just fled from the room because of your kittens. Yeah, I think what happened. So we have a cat, Hylia, who's taken to fathering the two kittens, and the two kittens, as they get older, they're developing their personalities, and they're starting to not want to be cleaned by him as much. They're in their terrible twos phase of, stop bathing me, Dad. They're able to bathe themselves, but Hylia still grabs them and tries to bathe them. Needless to say, we've woken up to having several things knocked down and way out of where they were originally. Yahweh's origin isn't known, if I remember correctly. El and Elohim. Well, Elohim is considered the father god that Yahweh kind of has to pay homage to. And given that Christianity became a monotheism, it would then be that Elohim and Yahweh in some forms could be extrapolated to be the same god. So at that point, you do have Yahweh as a Canaanite god solely because of the correlation with him and Elohim. But again, that's something I'd have to do some more research for. I might actually see if Aaron Raw would be willing to help with a video on that, because that's definitely up his avenue. He researches the history of religions a lot. and I'm a fan of him. I've had him on my channel once before, and I don't think he would necessarily hate being on the channel again. I've talked to him a few times since then, mostly on other people's channels. So hopefully that will be a thing that I can get done. We'll see if maybe that's a thing he wouldn't mind doing a live stream on. Where does Hashem come from? No idea. That seems, again, that's Elohim also means traveler from abroad, I believe. Yeah, again, a lot of that ends up being areas that I would have to do research on. It's an area that I would also probably get some. I would like to get some people who I know who research the Bible in depth to help on. Unfortunately, some of them are Christian, and I have no issue with having Christians on my channel, but I do have a rule that anytime one of them might come on to not peddle, not try to do any like, hey, try to convert people. So ideally, if I do get one on my channel that can help out with some of the lineage there, they don't end up resorting to either apologetics or any type of preaching. Because if it ends up being proselytizing, I'll just go, look, I don't tell people to convert to atheism, so if you don't tell people to convert to Christianity, we'll be good. I don't think I've ever told people to like just convert to atheism on my channel, except for maybe within the first 10 videos when I was in my like angry atheist phase and I was more like a little more edgy and a little more dumb, honestly. I was just kind of looking around to pick fights. There might be a few videos really early on my channel where I did stuff like that, but I don't think you can find them now, outside of those early ones. Leave your proselytizing at the door. Basically, yes, I have no idea with having an expert come onto my channel about anything, but don't proselytize your religion. Don't. Ocean's been my podcast partner since I started that podcast, and he hasn't tried to proselytize once, and he hasn't tried to proselytize anytime he's been on my channel for literally any other video, and that's one of the reasons we get along so well. So, no. If you can maintain the standards that my podcast co-host maintains, then you're good. I've been to Canada several times, Jamaica once. I would like to go to both of those places. It'd be great. It is great that we atheists have better knowledge about the history of deities and religious folk. Not necessarily. Sometimes we do. Sometimes there are atheists that do have better knowledge than some theists. But a lot of that ends up coming down to whether or not the theist has a horse in the race. That's why I have an issue with apologetics sometimes. Because I think a lot of apologetics comes down to having a horse in the race, meaning you have to be sometimes a little bit dishonest in how you construe something. For instance, when we did our video on what is dogma, me and Ocean both came to the same conclusion that dogma in doctrine is one of the biggest problems in religion. It is one of the foremost issues. Because when you have dogma, when you have a bit of scripture that says that you have to follow this 110% of the time, therein lies your problem. Because then you could say anything and they have to follow it. Whereas if you have a more loose interpretation, it's usually not going to be as problematic, because you're not making the tenets of the scripture axiomatic. As soon as you start making them axioms that everybody has to assume as blunt facts, you end up running into problems. But there are some people who defend dogma saying, well, it's just doctrine. What's wrong with doctrine? Well, if you take doctrine as dogma, then there's a lot that's wrong. It's hard to get somebody who isn't highly interpreting the passages as well. Yeah. Ideally, getting somebody who can exegete well without having a horse in the race is something that I would prefer having. It's something I'm actually going to cover on the episode about Jesus and polyamory, because I think the biggest problem is that there's two ways you can deal with the Bible. You can either exegete it, which is grabbing the original meaning from the original authors from the original time frame, and then extrapolating the meaning from that, or you can interpret it with the modern versions of those words, meaning that you can basically make the Bible to mean anything that you want. I find exegesis to be a much more honest approach to dealing with the Bible than the more fundamentalist, literalist approach that we have people like the NIFB doing. Oops, I suck at geography. Being in Australia, to go anywhere, I have to fly 10,000 kilometers so far. I said I'll be live streaming a conversion unboxing. Conversion unboxing. I don't even know what that would consist of. Apparently, also, I have a debate that might end up coming up. It's either going to be a debate or a discussion. But there's a channel that I've collaborated with on my gaming channel a couple times, and they've got a friend who apparently is peripherally aware of my channel. They're like a 21,000 sub channel. But he asked me if I would like to do a debate with his friend, and I said, well, I'd the guy in question has actually helped me with my channel before. He's helped me with my thumbnails, helped me with my banner on my channel. So it's like, yeah, sure. What's it going to be about? But I don't know what it's about yet. We're still figuring that out. But that'll probably be a live discussion on my channel. That might be a replacement for a Monday video at some point, because these do end up being live. So we'll see what that ends up being. That'll be an interesting scenario to play out. It'll just depend on how that goes. But I'll keep you guys updated as I can. I also just unlocked the community tab recently, so I'll see what I can do with that. Hopefully I can keep you guys updated through that as well. But it all really depends on what all the community tab allows for. I just unlocked it earlier this morning, and I have no idea what to do with it. I just know that it exists, and we'll see what happens with that. But as far as those are concerned, there's one more video that's probably going to be here this week. And I'm going to be doing one more Dangers of Woo episode this week for those who are fans of that series. This Danger of Woo is probably going to be on Orgone energy. It is an interesting pseudoscientific concept that it's dumb. It's dumb. The video is either going to be on Orgone energy, which is boiled down to the idea that there's energy all around us that can be harnessed, which like all pseudoscience, it's partially true, but it's also partially false, and the false parts are the actual problems at hand. So I'll probably be going into that. If not that, the other video that I might probably be doing is one on Peter Popoff, for those who are peripherally aware of him. Peter Popoff was a televangelist who was knocked down by the James Randi Foundation because he had a claim that he had claimed that he could hear prayers of people. God would tell them to him in his ear, and he would basically frisk people for their money using this. Problem Peter Popoff, though, is that his wife was actually funneling all the information through an earpiece, and James Randi caught him in that in the 80s. But apparently he's been doing stuff recently, like infomercials. So apparently he's coming back into relevance now that he has had a few years after being debunked. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to go after him and deal with him as well, because he's an interesting individual. He has these things called faith seeds, where you spend $100 on his website, and he'll send you a prayer, and he'll do something with the $100, something great. He's also got this type of salt that you sprinkle on your paychecks before you send them to him, so that he can guarantee that you will receive tenfold what you send to him, and therefore send to God. So he's an interesting piece of garbage, and I'm either going to be doing him or the Orgone energy thing this week. It's going to be one of the two, or I might push Joshua's video back. Those are the four that I have in the works right now. In an ideal world, one of them is going to be pushed back to the other week, and definitely totally not forgotten. Keep this as the reminder that there's at least one video that if it gets forgotten that I need to take on and do again. Said Robert says Jim Bakker's back on television after the epic Jim and Tammy Frey Baker scandals and his jail term. Well, of course Jim Bakker's back on television. What else is he going to do? One of the biggest problems with televangelists is they've really only got two things they can do. Well, no, that's disingenuous. They can probably do more than these things, but being a televangelist means that you're probably already an expert in doing one of two things: scamming people out of money, or selling things. Usually the two are not mutually exclusive. Usually you're selling things that are also a scam to get people's money. Which means that generally you've got a few avenues these people can do: door-to-door sales, used car sales, infomercials, or televangelizing. And I have no issue with infomercials. I would actually like to PA on a set for an infomercial at some point, just because it would be an interesting experience. But one of my biggest problems is that when your skill set is only your ability to sell things to people, you've probably got a dishonest skill set. And go figure, a televangelist is dishonest. That's totally not something that we've ever seen in the past. Kent Hovind went back after his prison term. Yeah, Kent Hovind came back in full. Blame Steve for that. Steve accepts full responsibility for bringing Kent Hovind back. And yeah, these characters are very, very parasitic. basically they can only exist as long as they're getting money from other people, and the way that they extract this money is dishonest. So, for instance, if you have somebody like me, Holy Kool-Aid, Genetically Modified Skeptic, or even like a gaming channel, what we do is we provide content that you want, and then ask for maybe Patreon donations or buying merch or stuff like that. And that's how a lot of us will make our livings. That's how I pay grocery bills and stuff like that. But when you have somebody like Kent Hovind, all they're offering is the ability to lie. And if you believe the lies, then that's on you. But Kent Hovind's channel just hit like 100,000 subscribers. Like, the guy is steamrolling YouTube, which is really unfortunate. Problem is that those guys wouldn't exist without donations. If I stopped getting donations on my channel, I would still have advertiser revenue, which isn't a whole lot, but it means I would still at least survive for a little bit. So, without donations, I'm not screwed. They're just nice. With Kent, though, if he doesn't have people supporting him, he has no other avenue to make money. That's it. That's all. If people stop buying what he's selling, he's got nothing left. But people are buying what he's selling hook, line, and sinker again, so here we are. Like, for instance, for me, if I stopped being able to do anything, I would just go and do PA work full time. That's what I would do if I could manage it. I'd probably actually make more money that way too. But I am not in this solely for the money. I'm in this for actually educating and helping and having the harder conversations with other people on their channels. You take somebody like Steve, take his channel away, what does he do? He's got a huge skill set that he could apply to literally anything. So he'd be fine. Take Thomas Westbrook, take his channel away. What's he going to do? Again, he's got a good skill set. He can take it into anything. He could just go right into the film industry and be fine. Take away Kent Hovind, what does he do? He withers. Take away Ken Ham's ministry, what would he do? He would wither. It's terribly, terribly problematic. Redacted says prosperity gospels are only second to faith healing and evil. I agree. I think it's hard for me to even say if I would say it's second or higher. Because faith healing, at least in some cases, with faith healing, you're asked to go to the doctor as well, but there's a prayer in tow to help out. It's still dishonest, it's still scummy, and it's still harmful. In fact, the Templeton Foundation found out that it's more harmful to tell people that they're getting prayers than not. Due to, I think it was performance anxiety it came down to. But yeah, faith healing is up there. But my prosperity gospel, though, is just asking for money with nothing else. And because it's tied to a religion, you can get people who might not have that money to send the money that they needed to pay for a bill or pay for something else because they believe in your religion. They believe that God, who says that he'll pay everything back 3 to 10-fold, will actually pay them back, so you're paying that money in. It's a whole lot harder. Oh, and by the way, another thing that needs to be added to that is after that money gets paid in, let's say that money is used for missionary work. That money is then used to basically go in door-to-door sales for more people to pay more money. I might actually consider prosperity gospel a little bit higher than faith healing, only because prosperity gospel generally means it's the door-to-door salesman version of Christianity, which I find bad. With faith healing, though, at the very best, you have doing nothing good. At the very worst, you obviously have children dying. I did a video with Bionic Dance on faith healing that you guys should definitely see if you guys haven't already. So obviously there's an emotional aspect to that. Having a child die is horrible, and therefore faith healing is horrible. But at the same time, I think that prosperity gospel, just in general, like by its very nature, is maybe more scummy. Because at least with faith healing, there are some people that legitimately think they're doing good. They're not. They're hurting people. But they at least think they're doing good. They're duped into thinking they're doing well. With your prosperity gospel, I don't know if you can legitimately take like a Bill Osteen, or Joel Osteen rather, or a Peter Popper, and grab, if you can grab those guys and say that they honestly think they're doing good, I seriously doubt that they think they're doing well. I think it's almost 100% certain guaranteed that they know that they're grabbing this money from people and they're just being dishonest. Otherwise, they're just being dishonest with themselves. Christopher says it's literally a pyramid scheme. It is. It is, actually. And I've actually been to 2 multi-level marketing type companies before. I can generally tell a pyramid scheme when I see it. When I was working at a deli a while back, my girlfriend Pam was approached by somebody who was offering her a ability to sell beauty products. But it basically was, spend $120 to get these beauty products you can use on yourself, and then you can also go door to door with these beauty products and try to sell them. That's just a pyramid scheme. That's all that is. She tried to reason with me for about a day or two that it wasn't a pyramid scheme, and I'm like, look, I've been to 2 of these companies. It's a pyramid scheme. It's MLM. Redacted says, I'd say health is more important than money, but you make a good point about honesty. It kind of comes down to intent. You've got, it's a real complicated issue because on one end, you've got the intent is more scummy on one end. With faith healing, the intent is not to kill the kid. The intent is to help. It's just so horribly misguided that it ends up doing so. With your prosperity gospels, the intent is usually just to garner extra wages, and therefore it's more problematic. But sometimes the more pragmatic view isn't the intent, it's the end result. For instance, you've got the religion of Islam is not in and of itself one of the most violent religions. But then you go to places like Saudi Arabia, and you find that in its extremist form, it is one of the most violent religions there. So pragmatically, it's almost better to treat it as if it is the most violent religion, because that's what we see in society when Islam is taken to the extreme, even though its texts are actually somewhat less violent than those of Christianity. But in the modern era, that's not the pragmatic view. And Edward says faith healing works. It's a placebo effect. It works, but the way it works is weird. So there are some instances where faith healing causes the placebo effect and helps. But specifically in prayer, when intercessory prayer was researched by the Templeton Foundation, they found that during the surgeries that people knew they were being prayed for, it actively decreased their chances of doing well. Again, it came down to a kind of performance anxiety. And in that sense, it didn't work. All it did was make things worse. So it gets a bit complicated when you look at the data for that. But there is definitely a side of the placebo effect that can come into play that can help, but I think the net was that it ended up doing more harm than good. Placebos only worked on imagined illnesses. Not necessarily. The placebo effect is not terribly well understood by the medical field, but we know that it does happen. The body actually has its own healing abilities. Obviously, you can heal yourself. Your cuts heal themselves. You can get better from headaches. Sometimes cancer will go into remission on its own. Your body does have healing factories, and the placebo effect can kick those into overdrive and take care of things. Problem is that it's a terribly unreliable mechanism, and it's a mechanism we don't fully understand. And that's why it's not something that we can rely on. And again, when you look at the studies, sometimes it ends up being that trusting in something like the placebo effect for something like faith healing ends up just doing harm instead of good. Iron Chariter said a while back, is Catholicism polytheism? It's the best way I've seen to look at Catholicism is that it's monotheism with polytheistic aspects. So there's only one God, only one deity that they worship, but they do have saints, and these saints serve the functions that other minor gods might serve in some polytheistic faiths. But they are not considered gods. So by the strictest definition, it would still be monotheism. But by its operation, it definitely has polytheistic aspects. Definitely. But that's not unlike the pantheon of gods you find in the Old Testament, even in Protestant Christian faiths. There's an element of polytheism in there as well. So it's not like you can really completely distance Christianity from polytheism in any of its forms. Even the mere notion of a triune God, which doesn't even appear in the Bible itself. But the notion of a Trinity is a bit polytheistic in its own right. It's a bit of an apologetic polytheism. There's three gods here, but they're all one God. Well, so it's polytheism and monotheism at that point. It's a bit of a complicated topic there. Islam has so many innovations that create some to think that there is hypocrisy. Islam is there's a lot of things that Islam has done, and it's not necessarily Islam. It's just the Arab countries have done, like in the realms of mathematics, they've done exceptionally well. But in the most extreme forms of Islam, you have things like ISIS. Then again, in the most extreme forms of Christianity, you have things like the KKK. So it's not like Christianity is exempt from these problems. Although I would say for Islam, there is Surah to the cow, and there's the whole issue of inheritance that come down and make me believe that it's a bit favorable to be male in the religion of Islam, and I find that to be problematic in general, because having gender conforming stereotypes in general is a bit outdated now. Like nowadays, the idea of a stay-at-home dad and a full-time working mom, that's not outside the realm of possibility, and it's not even really frowned upon that much anymore, only by people who are so ingrained in, the way things used to be. Those people aren't even worth listening to in the first place, because, tradition is only as useful as tradition is only as useful as the era that you are currently in. If the tradition is still useful, then the tradition can continue. If the tradition is no longer useful, then, why keep the tradition? So we have Idewolf as an ex-priest of Gaelic polytheism. I understand the psychological effects of rituals and spells. I've actually been to a pagan ritual before. And the psychological effect that I saw there, it really didn't do a whole lot for me, but I did see a lot of people gain benefit from the psychological effect there. So there's definitely one there. Just in general, having some type of ritual, even if it's just your morning ritual, is beneficial. At that point, you have to determine whether or not the good outweighs the bad. And in some cases, the good does outweigh the bad. In some cases, the good definitely does not outweigh the bad. Again, when you point to something like Islam, it might stabilize the government of a certain country for a period of time, but if the end result is a country like what we see in Saudi Arabia, then I'd say the net is definitely a negative. But it all depends on what happens in that particular situation. So you've got to actually study whatever culture those rituals are stemming from and what they're doing. Clade says polytheism would be a good topic, oft mentioned, seldom explained or explored. Maybe when Ocean is back. It is definitely something that I want to explore with Ocean, mainly because my views on it are going to be that I grew up in a Christian household, but I grew up with friends who were Wiccan, who were pagan, who were part of polytheistic religions, but because they knew I was Christian, it was not something that came up in conversation a lot. It was just the fact that they exist and were part of that religion. Now I've got more exposure, and I would like to have more conversations about it. I have no intent of converting to any religion. Even if I were to somehow come to the conclusion that a God does exist, I think that I would never convert to a religion of any kind. I see no benefit to doing so. In my personal view, while God belief is a philosophical position, religion itself is a bit of a vestigial origin. It's a bit of a vestigial organ. It's something that society had, that helped society structure into what it is today, but we nonetheless are where we are today, and I don't know if it's necessarily needed anymore for that structure. We have groups of people who can gather over any interest. They don't have to gather over the belief in a deity. We have the ability for people to be under a government instead of under a religion. It's not to say that all government's good. Obviously, you can get some people who are so pro-government they're basically nationalist and statist. That's problematic in its own right. That's a topic for another video, probably. But I don't see much benefit to religion in itself anymore. Somebody needs to believe in a God to get through the day. That's their own business. God belief is like I said, it's a philosophical position, not a religious one. You can believe in any God and still not adhere to any one religion. Paxaball says, if I had a religion, rent would be against it. I don't know what you mean by rent would be against it. Maybe you can clarify on that for me. Iron Chair says, depending on which Bible you read, man was created in our image for the Catholics, or in his image for the Christians. Very confusing. Yeah, at that point, you really have to come down to which translation you're working with. I believe that New American Standard is considered by most historians to be one of the more accurate translations now. I'll have to get with some of my friends on that. I have a friend who's actually in school for apologetics right now, who can help me with that. Generally, if I have a translation problem in the Bible, he's one of the people that I'll actually go to and say, "Hey, is this how this thing is?" Because I'm going to be 100% honest with everybody. You don't need to make enemies with everybody of every other religion. There are people who are religious who can be just as helpful as people who are non-religious. I don't find tribalism to be terribly useful. If you are an atheist who only wants to be surrounded by atheists, that's on you, but do understand that there are a few tribalistic tendencies that come into play there, so don't mock religion for its tribalistic tendencies if you're going to adhere to the exact same ones. Edwulf says, religion is a tool we no longer need. It is a crutch for those who can already walk. I kind of agree with that. And yes, actually, John, it is you. You are the one who I would be asking. Was it New American Standard, or was it a different version of the Bible that's considered the most accurate one right now? I know we had this conversation at one point, but I don't remember which version you said was the one that I needed to grab. I actually need to put it on my Amazon wish list. Super Saiyan Smoke Monsters, I love the DBZ poster in the back. I like it too. The only problem I have with it, though, is if you notice, it's only the movie villains that are in there. None of the villains in that poster are villains from the anime itself. They're all from the movies. Either ESV or NASV. So, okay, so New American Standard Bible or ESV. Okay, so I was right. It was New American Standard that I was remembering. Yeah, those are more accurate. Most historians would agree those are more accurate to the original translations, the original meaning, than the Catholic version of the Bible, which is, I can't remember what that one's based off of. There's some writings it was based on. I think it was post King James. I could be wrong though. I'll have to ask Max on that. He's Catholic. He'd know better than I would on that. He studies the history for it. Only white males don't find tribalism important. Ask a white South African about its importance. Tribalism is, to me, has the same vestigial problems that I view religion on the whole to have. When you have a vestigial organ, it's there because it had a use at one point. It doesn't necessarily have it anymore. In modern society, you don't necessarily need it, because in modern society, what purpose does tribalism serve except for making your in and out groups more obviously identifiable? We don't have as much benefit for in and out groups here in our society. And I grew up in a ghetto. I grew up around gangs where going down a street at any point in time could actually mean that you died because you walked into the wrong gang. Luckily, I had grown up with some of the members of those gangs. So when I walked down the street, if I saw, a group of like 15 people on a street corner, if they saw me and one person piped up, then I could at least pass that street corner without having to do an entire walk around to get to my house because of personal safety reasons. I don't find tribalism terribly useful because I've had experiences like that where I see tribalism at work and I see it not do terribly positive things. It can do positive things, but I don't see any benefit to maintaining a strict in and out group. I find that I really only find the benefits of tribalism to be survival in life or death situations. Here in the modern era, though, in first world countries, those situations don't necessarily come up anymore. Not to the extent that they used to. So tribalism in and of itself becomes less useful and becomes more harmful, because then you have your in and out group issues where you can have cults develop. One of the biggest things they do is utilize tribalism for in and out group politics. That is almost universally harmful. JMD says, or if you can actually read the closest to the original manuscripts we have, which is in Hebrew and Greek, there's another person that I've talked to on Twitter who's familiar with a lot of the Greek and Hebrew translations, who I've used as a reference for certain things. When I did my video response on Stephen Anderson, and I was looking for the original translations for a lot of the more homophobic passages in the Bible, I was using him as a reference. to figure out if I was actually grabbing the right references from there, and turns out that I was. It just took a lot of research. Exegeting the Bible is problematic. It's complicated. Ed Wolf says, I dare you to try to pronounce my avatar's surname. Hint, it's Anglo-Saxon Old English. Oh god, this is going to be problematic. I'm going to show how much of an ass I am. Slegwurta? Is that how you pronounce it? Slegwurta? I'm probably doing it terribly. I'm probably horrible at that. I don't want to play with your religious toys, and don't bring your toys over to my house and make my kids play with them. Hitchens. I actually had that video posted on Twitter at one point. Because I agree with that. If you don't make me play with your toys, then I don't care. And most of the people who I talk to about religion, who are religious, don't make me play with their toys, and that's where I gain my respect. Then again, Baal is the Hebrew term for husband, isn't it? I'm not 100% certain. I'd have to defer to somebody who's got more research on the topic than that. It was used for identification when humans became the apex predator, and the only threat came from other humans. Well, this is true. It was definitely used for... Tribalism is a useful thing for identification. But again, in this era, not so much. But I don't think my opinion on that comes strictly from the fact that I'm white. I was born white, but I was born into a primarily black neighborhood. So to me, there was no difference between a white and a black person. We were just people. Granted, I got beat up because I was the only white person on the block, so maybe everybody saw a problem with it except me. But still, it's... I still don't find tribalism useful, even at that. Not anymore, at least. At one point in time, yes, but again, it's vestigial. I don't see much point for it anymore. Was Jesus born out of wedlock? I don't know if that even matters so much, because if Jesus was supposedly born of a virgin, then there's not really much reason for it to matter. Wolf says, close enough, sir. Hey! Well, that's at least something. Oh, do you think my knowledge video service also serves as my tech guy? Yeah, when JMD runs into tech issues, he's just like, hey, Cirrus, can you help out with this? I'm also the one who runs all the tech on my channel, obviously, so at least there's that. I actually did like JMD's knowledge video. It's very along the lines of what I believe knowledge to be. When somebody says, oh, I don't believe something, I know something, I like to point out that that's incorrect. If you know it, then it entails that you also believe it. Just because, again, Venn diagram, if you have belief on one side and truth on the other, knowledge is where belief and truth meet. So if you believe something and it happens to be true, then you know it, whether you know it or not. My personal thought on it, and that's generally what JMD was saying in his video, and I actually agree with that. Again, there's the benefit to not having a tribalistic viewpoint. He's a theist. He's a Christian. He runs a Christian channel. I can still find use in his channel. I can still find things that I agree with that are still helpful and still useful. Chrismer says Cirrus is my best geeky friend. Yeah, me and Chrismer actually need to talk about Batman Darkest Metal, the series that he's been reading recently. I suggested one of the more recent Batman stories to him, a giant event that happened in DC Comics, and he's been knee-deep into that, just sending me messages on Facebook when he comes to stuff. That said, Chrismer, have you gotten to the origin of the Batman Who Laughs? I am curious. JMD says, I like your philosophy rants. Yeah, there are some people that don't like my philosophy rants when I do those, but, that's fine. I don't care. When I did my video on Clifford's Principle, I spent an entire day just reading through the Ethics of Belief in the Standard Encyclopedia of Philosophy. So if somebody doesn't like my philosophy videos, I put a lot of work into them, so bite me. It's fine. Oh, that's your cat I keep hearing. I keep checking on Loki. Yeah, no, my roommate has his door closed, and one of our cats has taken to our roommate a lot, and so he's constantly over there trying to get attention from him. I would assume that is the cat that is currently meowing. BK says, I enjoy forcing atheism on people. I don't find it terribly useful. I might die and find out that, the God of the Bible's real, or I might die and find out that one of the Nordic gods is real. I might die and find out that I am having my soul weighed against a feather and Anubis is staring down my back. Any of those could be the case because I simply don't know. I don't find forcing atheism on people to be the case. I'll ask people to think. I'll provide my arguments and my evidence that I have for my own belief. But asking people to deconvert, if you deconvert, cool. If you don't deconvert, also cool. Just think. That's all I care about. It also says, for anyone interested in the translation of I'm not pronouncing that again into modern English is sledgehammer or blacksmith. Oh, cool. Well, then you're definitely at home here. Hammers are kind of a thing here. Applying philosophy is great. Pure philosophy gets a bit boring unless you're into it. I agree. This is why when I had my video, or not my video, it was on the Non Sequitur show, me and Max, Catholic fusionist, had our debate on abortion. We got into the philosophy and the morality a little bit, and then I kind of steered us away from it, saying, look, we can argue the philosophy, we can argue the morality all we want, but we'll never come to anything useful at the end. We'll just have our own opinions. It's better for us to argue the political implications, because those are the things that are actually going to hurt people. We need to talk about the actual legislation that would need to be passed based on his particular viewpoint. He took pro-life, I took pro-choice stance. We would need to talk about legislation, who would be impacted, how it would impact them, because that's infinitely more useful, and that's applying the philosophy of morality to the real world instead of just arguing the morality in its purest form. My hype for the Avengers 4 trailer, I'll be honest, Infinity War left me disappointed. So we'll see. Infinity War was billed as its own movie, but it was constructed as a part one, and I don't like when that happens. As at the end of the movie, I'm not going to spoil anything, but at the end of the movie for Infinity War, when I got out of the theater, or when the movie was ending, I was like, oh, we're going into the third act. Things are about to get real. That didn't happen. The movie just ended. So I was not terribly happy with that. Because said, I mean, they pretty much had a giant mech at that point, which they'd have kept it. It was awesome. Or still, hold on, I need to scroll up to see what Prism was saying. Nah, I'll wait until I'm later in Dark Knight's Metal until later. Except for that one part with Fulcrum. I forgot the name of the robot. And no, I just got past like 2 comics, sadly. Haven't had much time to read lately. Okay, so you haven't been able to see all of the... you haven't been able to see all the stuff that's happened in that comic. Okay, I'm not going to spoil anything. There's... for anybody who's a Batman fan, read through the Batman Darkest Metal comics. It's interesting. It's all the worst possible instances of Batman basically coming down on the main universe and trying to destroy it. One of them where Batman inhales the Doomsday virus to kill Superman. One of them, which is the Batman Who Laughs, who basically is Batman if he becomes the Joker. One of them is Batman the Red Death, where he wanted the Flash to fix the timeline, and the Flash didn't agree, so he ended up stealing the Flash's powers and body, and became known as the Red Death. There's a lot of interesting Batman concepts that came from that. Trump confused paradise with pleasure. What do you think is going on there? I think Trump's been to one too many brothels. That's my thought there, in all honesty. I've laid my thoughts bare on the shit that happened with Trump for the California forest fires on Twitter. I'm not very happy with our president, but you know what? Honestly, if that's a statement that I never have to utter again in my life, then I will probably convert to a religion. I'm that confident, because I know it's only going to take a week for me to be disappointed by something the man does again. So, and it doesn't matter. I'm willing to hedge those bets. I don't think the world is going to just perfectly line up to make it to where that bet backfires on me. Zalrock says that Star Wars 7 and 8 are bad. Porgs are food. Porgs can be food. I mean, it's the Star Wars universe. Anything can be food. There are alien species in Star Wars that eat exclusively humans. So, I mean, there's zombies in the Star Wars universe. So, practically everything is on the food chain. So, I have no problem with that. As for 7 and 8 are bad, I kind of disagree. I think 7 was good for what it needed to be. 7 desperately needed to be a retelling, or a retread, basically, because there was so much on the line for possibly screwing up the franchise further after the prequels. So I understand the route they went with Star Wars Episode 7, and I am fully behind how they had to do it. Episode 8, I think Episode 8 would have done well to not have a different director. If they had kept Abrams on as director, I think it would have been better, because some of the things that he had set up in the previous film wouldn't have been undermined in the next one. There's some of the things that I enjoyed about it. I really enjoyed Luke in that movie. I enjoyed how Yoda acted in that movie, since we actually got a little bit of Yoda in there. I was not terribly happy with how they went about the not Sith Lord in that movie. Snoke went from being one of the most hyped up villains to one of the most disappointing pieces of utter garbage, and just turned into nothing but a plot device. So no, not very happy with what they did with Snoke. Snoke should have been left for the third movie if they were going to deal with him, and he should have had at least 2 movies of expansion on his character instead of what we got. So no, I don't think that 8 was a bad movie, but I do think that 8 was worse than 7, and I do think that the casino scene didn't need to be there, but I didn't mind the casino scene, and I don't think that I don't think that they operated with Snoke as well as they could have. The one royal guard with the twin light daggers should have stabbed Rey through the back. See, the problem I have with that is, if you've read some of the Star Wars books, unless each of those guards was using a force shield of some kind, which I doubt they were, there's no way that any of them would have been able to land a lethal blow onto Rey, unless they all swarmed. Because problem with using melee weapons against Jedi in the books is that the Force will generally tell you if a lethal blow is coming, and will protect you from a lethal blow. It's not always going to protect you from glancing blows, but lethality is something that's generally protected. I don't think Rey would have been killed by the daggers, even if he had tried. That's just me, though. I'm a huge Star Wars nut when it comes to the books and when it comes to the movies. So I could be wrong, but all Star Wars fans are shitty in their own right, me included. We are all either fans of Legends or not fans of Legends, or we hate Disney or we don't hate Disney. And I had a whole conversation about tribalism earlier in this video, and now it's showing through that for Star Wars fans, you've got nothing but that. Rey kind of trained really quickly, though. I mean, was Rey's training any quicker than Luke's, though? Luke was at the point where he couldn't be harmed by anybody except Vader in Empire Strikes Back, realistically. And his training was no shorter than Rey's. So Rey operated in the second movie about how you would expect her to be able to operate in the second movie. From what I understood about a Hemet expert, her stance is bad. All Jedi stances are bad. All stances in the Star Wars universe are inherently not good unless they are built solely on the prospect of using only melee. So, for instance, Darth Maul uses a double-bladed glaive. That is one of the most impractical weapons you can use. I know, it's my LARPing weapon. It's one of the most impractical weapons you can spar with. Also, Obi-Wan's stance, the Genso, when Form 3. Is it Genso? No, it's not Genso. But Form 3, which is what Obi-Wan uses, has a hand in the front and his sword in the back. That's only usable if you're a Force user and you can use the Force to fight people. Having the sword behind you has no purpose. If you've ever studied any form of if you've ever studied any martial arts with a sword, your sword is generally in front. It is protecting you. It is not behind you, with your body exposed. Moreover, not with your arm in front, able to be lopped off by your opponent. And considering that most Star Wars combat basically boils down to, can I cut my opponent's arm off fast enough? That's what most lightsaber combat that is not built for blaster fire does. Yes, you would end up having several problems with their stances outside of Force-using combat. This is why in the books there's actually Jedi that strictly practice lightsaber combat, and their stances vary widely away from what your Jedi that generally combine the Force with their talents will do. So even if she's got bad form in the movie, that's fine, because it's assumed that they're going to have bad form because we don't have Force powers. We don't have the ability to put up shields and barriers and Force push people. They can compensate for bad form. Luke's final stand was the biggest disappointment of my life. You mean Luke's final stand in Episode 8? Because I thoroughly enjoyed that. I think that the way they played that was good. The only problem I had with it is that sometimes it was physical and sometimes it wasn't. Like, it seemed like he dodged all the lightsaber strikes because he wasn't corporeal. but he was able to hold on to physical objects and interact with people physically, so he was corporeal. That's... I can't think of an actual Force talent that was in the books that operated like that, but I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. From what you know, Grey are more powerful. There are times... there are times where Grey Jedi are more powerful. There are times where they're not. So one of the two best examples of Grey Jedi in the movies, at least, are Qui-Gon Jinn and what's his face? For some reason, I can't remember his name. Samuel L. Jackson's character. Both of them are basically, if you read the books, as close to a Grey Jedi as the movies ever get. Qui-Gon disagreed with everything the Council did. He disagreed heavily with many purely Jedi principles. And he was willing to use aspects of the dark side when needed. And Mace Windu, that's his name. Mace Windu's entire shtick was his ability to use the seventh form of lightsaber combat, which is Vapad, which literally means you have to step into the dark side in order to even access any of the powers that Vapad grants you. Both of them were as close to Grey Jedi as you can get in the movies. It's unfortunate that we haven't received any real instances of Grey Jedi in the movies. Yes, thank you, Iron Charger, was Mace Windu. The type of characters to play in a Star Wars tabletop game: pilot, because they can carry flamethrowers, which can't be blocked by Force users. Fairly certain that Force pushes and Force fields can block flames. I don't think it's the best defense, but I think that they can, at least to that extent. So Zods, no, that was Britain, human pilot, Mace Windu. With that said, though, it does seem like the conversation has delved very into the nerd tech category, which is fine, because I'm a nerd and a geek. But I am going to go ahead and hop off, since I have given the updates that I wanted to give for you guys. And hopefully the little bit of divergence into nerd culture wasn't a horrible thing. That's probably going to be something that I try to keep on my gaming channel when I can, but hey, it was topical to the conversation that was happening here. Thanks, JMD, for derailing it a little bit into the Avengers territory that led us here. With that said, I will talk to you all later, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.